As I was doing my doctorate, I'm finishing a doctorate at Oxford University in the UK, and I was already using NVivo, and I heard that within several departments there were really a need to use a software for qualitative coding and analysis. So I started training my fellow graduate students and research staff in my department, social policy and social work, and with the word of mouth. This is how I started training more people. And since I have a concern, I really want the quality of my training to be monitored in some form. QSR, which is the developer of NVivo, based in Australia, have a system of regulating the quality of its trainer. So once a year, I have to submit all the trainings, all the contact detail of my clients to the company. They do a random sampling of most of the client, and then there is a blind review of my work. They will contact some of them, and based on the feedback, then I'm graded. So that's how the system works. It's not as strict as a real professional board, but at least it's a protection for the client, and it's also assists me in how I can improve the way I try to deliver knowledge about NVivo. So without further introduction, we will start the demonstration. The demonstration of today entails very shortly and very briefly the 4 main modules of my training. We start with data preparation. Data preparation means when we work especially with structured data, so it can be individual interviews or group interviews, when we always ask the same sequence of questions, there is a very specific way of formatting word transcripts. And when you're interested to assign the sociodemographics of your respondents with their answer, then we have to format the Excel spreadsheet in a special way. So we're going to first look at this in Excel and in Word. The second phase is data coding. So once all the data are uploaded in NVivo, how do we go about coding data, and especially if you've been working in a structured manner? There's a way of reproducing the order and the hierarchy of questions within NVivo, so we're going to be looking at that. We're going to be also doing some emerging and thematic coding. The third module is data analysis. There is actually an NVivo7 has several query options. You can really go and explore your hunches, test some of your hypotheses in NVivo. We're going to be looking at most of its features, and we're going to end the session with the 4th module, which is data reporting. So once we've got our data coded and analyzed, how best can we convey our research? How are you? Our research findings in PowerPoint, in Word, etc. So we're going to first start with looking at the PowerPoint. I'm going to go very briefly through the entire software, and then we're going to do some of its steps within NVivo. When we open the software, the first thing that you will see is the welcoming page. You can then create a new project or open an already made project. There's nothing very magic about this. It's very simple. Then within the project, is any one of you familiar with our email manager Outlook? So most of you use Outlook. It's very good because NVivo7 has been inspired by the shaping and the design of Microsoft Outlook in the way all the functions are organized. So within the project path, and because we are in a university setting, especially here, we've got the NVivo7 installed, but you want to make sure that nobody messes around your data and your project. So there is a feature to protect your project with putting in a password. So this is for project protection. So once within the software, this is what we call, we're going to see that later, the navigation view. So it looks, in Outlook we would have, I think, email, contact, and the different options. So in NVivo7, you're gonna pass from one option to another. So within the sources, sources in the tutorial that we're going to be looking at, by default we have all the documents, so this is where you're going to upload your data. You can create folders to distinguish between the different properties of your data. Here we're going to have different focus group interviews. You can upload your project notes, your grant proposal. You can upload documents that have pictures embedded as well as tables, but you cannot, for instance, import a PDF extension document. They all have to be formatted in either text or document or RTF. So this is for the sources. For the nodes, nodes are the location within the software where you code your data. The way the coding system is organized, we have first the free nodes. Free node stands for non-hierarchical sequence of node. So let's say when you do a first and very broad coding of your data, you are coding text, passages of text. You name them, and you don't really want them to be already organized in terms of broad concepts, sub-concepts. You just want them to be listed. Then you're going to use free nodes. Some people use free nodes, other, especially if you work in a more inductive way, when you already know the theoretical framework that you want to apply in your data, then you can automatically start building your tree node structure. A tree node structure has a component of hierarchy. So here in the example we see that the main thing is called assumptions, under which you have different, what we're going to call children nodes. NVivo7 was developed by family sociologists. So the rationale of the tree node structure is that of a family generation models. So you can have the parent node, the child, the grandchild, etc., etc. It is suggested to have a more longer sequence of tree nodes than one that is very short and very fat, because if you have many generations of node, at the end of the 8th generation, perhaps very little coding will be coded there, and therefore the result might be meaningless. So a golden practice for coding the data, and according to the research tradition that you're using, is having more parent node and less generations. The cases. Cases in NVivo stands for what are the unit of analysis in your project if you are interested to run any comparative analysis. Cases are the place where our respondent as single individual are located, and we do assign the sociodemographics from the Excel spreadsheet to these cases. In the tutorial that we're going to be looking at, it's a tutorial that has been exploring in the US as well as in Australia the meaning of volunteering in a sample of people that have volunteered and other that never. So of course our basis for analysis are people, but cases can also be villages, town, institutions, depend on what you are looking at. So this is for our cases, and cases again can be organized in hierarchy. In our tutorial we have focus group, respondents and interviews, but to give you a more broad perspective, I decided to list them one after another and not group them like under two different families. Relationships. Relationship is a new feature in NVivo7. I don't know, has any one of you been using NVivo2 in the past? No, no one? Okay. Relationship says what it says. You're going to be demonstrating that you feel that there's a relationship between two projects of your items. So these items can be perhaps Anna refers a lot to Adams, or there is a special free node that refers to another free node. So you're going to be trying to establish that there is something going on between these two items, that there's actually a connection. Sets. Sets are like folders. like this one. You might want to create a set about all the items of Anna in your projects. If you are several coders, you might want, if I'm working with another coder, I might want to gather in my set all my nodes, and the other person can do the same. The rationale of creating sets is to perform certain analyses. However, sets are a feature that is not extremely used in NVivo. So it's really if you want your project to be extremely tight and tidy, so you can create sets and disaggregate the different project items that share a similar characteristics. Queries, this is a very powerful feature in NVivo7. We can run text query, compound query, coding query. We can also run matrix. So here we've been looking at the difference in terms of female and male. What was the text that was coded according to these two attributes to a series of nodes of cases. So we can, the outline that we have within the matrix can be the number of people that have a convergence between the attribute female related, let's say, to community work. So here we see that there is 4 female compared to 2 male. The outline also can be in terms of the density of word that were coded. So of course, if you have a coding protocol that is very strict, you know you can generate this output and you know that the findings can be quite interesting. However, if you have conducted focus groups and the people have dragged on and on and on about the same topic and you've been coding this, the coding density that you will have, let's say that the women talk much more about unpaid volunteer work than men, then you're going to have a greater coding density, but that does not mean that this coding density represents new topics or a great variety of what was said. So your coding protocol really needs to be very explicit if you want to generate such numerical output of your coding. Is there any question as I go along? Or no? Models, as it says, they are used to visualize connection between your data. An example that we're going to be doing this afternoon, we're going to actually be creating sets, running some searches, and then creating a relationship between some of the items that we're going to be discovering. And then the relationship between our 2 items can be directly drag and drop within the model, so then automatically you see all the linkage between your different project items. Models can be made static. So then at your beginning of your project, you could say, here is my overall hunches. You made it static so it can't change, and then as you code and go along, then you can develop different models. Some people like models, other people prefer building them in Word or in PowerPoint. It's really up to you. But if you manage to make sure that there's an interesting linkage between your data, models are interesting. Links. Links are features in NVivo that allows you to link different text passages together. So first we have, let's start with a memo. A memo is as you are reading your transcript or starting to code, when you really have a hunch about something, you can create a memo, attach it to a document or a note, and then start maybe writing the first draft of a part of your research results. So the memo is something quite substantial. An annotation is like a post-it. You know, as we read so many articles and we always write in the margin. The annotations serve this role in NVivo, so it's to comment on selected content in a source or in a node. And also it's to remind you about certain connection in your project. So you could, let's say that Anna refers constantly to James, let's say, and James also refers to Anna, and quickly you want to have access to the very text passage that where both the individual refer to each other, then you can capture this in NVivo, and with this link you can access how they've been talking or describing the other. Classification, and after I'm almost done, I think. Classification is, there's two types of classification. We first have the attributes. So when we upload our Excel spreadsheet, this is where the classification or the variables and the value appear. So in our project here we have a set of attributes, and this is also where we build a relationship. So if you want to build a relationship, in our example we're going to be looking at the topic of social interaction seems to mean a lot to women. So you're going to first be building the essence of your relationship types, which is going to be meaning a lot or mean a lot, and then you're going to be able to code very specific text passage where this interaction is happening within your relationship. So that's
is that the same as demographics?
No, it's different. No. We have the demographics, which is one type of classification, but it's also within classification that you build the essence of your relationship, which is another project item altogether. Okay? And then some of the resources for NVivo. Okay, so we're going to actually be building a project in the time that we have. So we have 40 minutes. We're going to first be looking at how our data need to be formatted in NVivo. So here I have a set of individual interviews. I'm going to open them. What is very, very important, are you familiar with the style and formatting system? Do you use them? Yes, no. When you work in a structured way in your research, and when you want the sequence of the question to be replicated automatically in NVivo, you need to use heading styles, and I'm going to tell you why. The first broad theme, which is question 1, we see here, if I put my cursor on the theme, I see in this corner that it has been coded at heading 1. Then I have a sub-question that has been coded at heading 2. So the rationale is that as you have different hierarchies of question, you need to assign to them a heading 1, a heading 2, or a heading 3, if you want that hierarchy to be automatically represented and reproduced in NVivo. Here there is a small problem, and it's very good that it happens. For a reason which I ignore, there's 2 heading 1. If you see this, make sure that you select which instance has been coded. So I simply clicked on heading 1, this one, and I see that it's this very small instance of document. I simply have to re-click on heading 1, and it has disappeared. This is important because otherwise you're going to end up with lots of heading 1 in NVivo, and you don't want to have that. Quickly, if you have a very large questionnaire, if you want to make sure that everything has been very well formatted, reduce, maybe not at 25, let's have 50. Reduce the view, and you're going to select the 8 instances, and then very quickly you can see whether everything has well been formatted for heading 1. And let's say for heading 2, I'm going to do the same. I've got question 1A, 3, 4, there was no sub-questions. That's all fine. Save. I'm going to close it. Sorry. So that was an example of how the formatting of individual interview had to be done. For focus groups, it's a little bit different. A focus group, because it's a focus group or a group interview, there is different people that are taking the turn for talking. So you're going to have to distinguish between, again, what is the main theme. So the main theme is still heading 1, And because there was no sub-theme within the focus group, the heading 2 was allocated to this to give the unique identifier for each of the respondents. This rationale is that once you're going to import your document in NVivo, you will say for the focus group, please pick up each heading 2 and bring them as a case. So what I'm going to have in my project, it will be that everything that Stephanie has mentioned in this focus group will be automatically assigned to her case, and then I'm going to assign Stephanie's sociodemographics to her case. So this is very important and very useful, but it can be a very daunting task. However, another point, you probably saw in the interview that there was no, when I was looking at the interview, we're going to go back. Anna, there are actually no unique identifier for Anna. Can someone tell me why in her interview? Simply because she was the only one in the interview. So when we're going to import her document, we're going to say straight away in NVivo, because it's a single individual that have participated in the interview, automatically convert the interview into a case. Okay? However, if you would like not to have the question of the interviewer, you could, within this interview as well, assign a specific code for the interviewer and a specific code to Anna. So when you upload the interview, you don't ask NVivo to convert the interview into a case, but you're going to do the same transforming process as we're going to do for the focus group. In which case, Anna will be assigned a case, and only her answer will be assigned to her case note. Okay. So this is for the data. So we're gonna.
Are you inside NVivo right now or outside?
No, I am in Word.
Yeah, way outside.
Yes. So that's the formatting bit. Don't think yet about NVivo. It's only how can we best structure our data. So when I am happy with this, make sure that you close the document. You don't need to close the application, and we're gonna create a project. So this is my NVivo7 icon. NVivo7, it's a lovely piece of software, but it's extremely memory hungry. You cannot run music, videos, SPSS, and NVivo7 unless you've got a mega machine. Otherwise, it's going to freeze, and it's more than usual, more than any software, because it has its own server that is inbuilt. So that's really one of the inconvenient. So I'm going to create a new project, which I'm going to put my initial, and today we are the and the date
March 22nd.
22nd of March.
22nd. Okay. Here we are. Okay. So this is what we see when we open the software. I'm going to just reset the customization so we can see. Okay. So as we send in the PowerPoint, I've got my sources here. I'm going to create some folders in the document. When I create memos, when I want to start reflecting on my data, automatically my memos will be assigned to this folder. My nodes will be here. So by default, the different nodes are node categories are created. I've got my free, my tree nodes, my cases. At the moment, everything is empty. My sets are there, different kind of query categories, etc., etc. If you want to protect your project, and I've put the specific path in the PowerPoint, so that's File, Project Properties, and that's going to be into Team, into Password. So I'm going to put my usual password. Apply, okay. So next time I'm going to want to reopen it, it's going to prompt me to ask for my password. Okay, so I'm going to import my sources. First of all, I want to make the distinction between my focus group and my interview. So I am in this window. Always use the right click of the mouse. This is where all the menus appear. New folder, so one is going to be interviews, the other one will be focus group. Once in interview, I'm going to bring my cursor into what we call here the list view, and when I have text, I have data, and whenever the data are displayed, this is called the detail view. You don't need to remember all this for now, but just think that when you want to import a specific document in your folder, you select it from this window, bring your cursor into the list view, import documents. I'm going to be locating my documents. Open. So in this dialog box, I'm going to ask NVivo, I want you to code the sources at new cases and at the location, of course, of cases. Okay. So here are my the different interviews. Double click on Anna. I just want to make sure whether everything is fine. Yes, it is. There is a difference in color between the headings. This is simply because I prefer in all my NVivo project to have heading 1 in blue and heading 2 black, but you can change this. This is no problem. However, I also want to see whether the creation of my cases were successful. So I'm going to be going from source to notes in cases, and here we are. So the case of Anna has been created, and because I did not assign a specific user ID before each of the answer of Anna, in her case is basically a duplicate of her document. So we see the question, the question, the answers, etc. But for our focus group, we're going to have a bit more precision. I wanted to show you both options for you to decide how you feel the most comfortable to work. So now import the focus group. I'll locate them in. So I've got some people that have never volunteered, and I have two focus group where people volunteered. The very important aspects here in the dialog box is that I will not code the document at the sources because I have more than one people, so then that would not it would not be correct. I will simply import each of them, and here are my data. However, I want to convert my unique user ID into cases, so I'm going to select my 3 focus group, right click, code, auto code, and in my auto code question, NVivo is saying which headings do you want me to pick up and transform into a case. That's certainly not defining volunteer work, which is heading 1. I only want the heading 2 because that's how the user ID were formatted. So I'm going to say please only pick up heading 2. It's not an existing node. I'm going to create a new node, which is going to be in my cases, and I'm going to name my cases. This is like a parent case just for them to be assigned. So focus group respondent. Okay. Okay. Go into node, case, and what do I see here? My list of people. If I double click on Annette, so then you see that everything that Annette has mentioned in her focus group has been assigned to her case. Using unique user ID or unique identifier is very important if you've been doing sequential data collection. So if I have 5 people or 10 people that I have repeatedly interviewed who have participated in focus groups, in interview, or in other situation, the fact that you always assign the same user ID to each respondent, then you can automatically retrieve everything that this individual has mentioned throughout the data collection to his or her case. Okay? If, for example, I don't want to distinguish between my focus group cases and my interview, I'm going to select my cases and bring them as let's say individual cases, and I'm going to delete focus group here also. And facilitators, I don't want to necessarily to keep the facilitators questions, so I'm going to delete it as well. Yes. Okay. The last feature of data preparation is how can we upload the sociodemographics within NVivo. So here are all my cases. I'm going to open for you the casebook. The casebook, if the casebook would be full of variables, then we would see a matrix here. At the moment we don't have anything, but we're going to now import our data. So here I am in my Excel spreadsheet. So by default, of course, it's in this format. So I am happy with my Excel spreadsheet. What is important is that in the cell A1, nothing is written. NVivo assumes that this is the case, and you simply have to reproduce and to reproduce the exact spelling and the way the names are spelled. Otherwise, if I don't know, you put 2 S's at Rosa, and in the software her case has only 1 S, that's going to create a duplicate. So if you have a huge database, make sure that the data are appropriately input. I am happy with that. I need to save it. Save as a text delimited file. I'm going to choose, you can choose tab delimited, or I'm going to choose Unicode text. Save. Yes. I'm going to close it. Yes. Yes, there's a series of yes, and then my text file has been created. For interview, I'm happy with the formatting, save as, Unicode, save, yes, close it, yes. Okay, back in NVivo, when we want to import what we call the casebook, tools, casebook, import casebook. So we're going to first locate our interview casebook. Open. This part is okay. Case name format. I don't have any hierarchy in the way my cases have been structured, so I'm going to change hierarchical to names. And I'm going to make sure that these 2 are ticked, yeah? Okay, here we are. So I have all my interview people have been assigned, their sociodemographics have been assigned. I will repeat the same for my focus group. That's not hierarchical. And then I need to replace existing attribute values. Okay, here we are. So the casebook has been formatted. So this is how we're going to end the first module, data preparation. I've got my text, I've got the sociodemographics. Now I'm ready to start coding. So knowing that in my interviews, if I go back in ANA, my data collection was relatively structured. I might want to ask NVivo, could you please reproduce the hierarchy of questions for the focus group and for the interviews, so that I might want to have a quick access to all the answers that was given to the first question, which is current use of time in volunteering. Okay, for this to happen, I'm going to go into nodes. I'm going to select a tree node, and I'm going to create a new tree node, which I'm going to call topics of interviews. Okay, and another one for the topic of the focus groups were relatively different. Focus group. Okay, go back into my source. I can select all my interview because I know that the formatting, the sequence of questions are exactly the same. Right click, code, auto code. I'm gonna ask it for my interviews. Yes, I want all the headings to 2 become 3 nodes, so I'm going to leave it to all. It's an existing known node. I'm going to select it. It's topic introduced. Okay. Okay. Go back into node. Topic introduced. Here we are. So when I want to have a quick access at all the answers of the question, how do you feel about the current use of time in your life, I guess. Here I see, I can distinguish the different respondents because it tells me this is Anna's interview, this is Bernadette, etc., etc. I'm going to do the same for the focus group. Source, focus group, right-click, code, auto-code. In this case, the focus groups, I only want the heading 1 to be picked up because the heading 2 were used for my unique identifier. So I'm going to only select a heading 1. It's an existing node, which is called topic focus group. Okay. Go back into my node. Topic focus group, and all the answers of defining volunteer work has been, here is for the non-volunteer group, here is for the volunteer group 1, etc., etc. Okay? That's good if we work in a very structured way, but what about if we don't work in such way? Well, we're gonna be looking at some of the questions, some of the answers that the people gave to defining volunteer work. So I'm going to close, knowing that NVivo is very memory hungry. When you end up with loads of tabs open, just make sure that you close those that you won't need. So I'm going to only keep defining volunteer work. Okay, let's say that I want to see what were, within all my questions, what were the emerging themes in the data. So here I see, and as I said, emerging themes, I might want to work with 3 nodes. So here I have my transcripts, and there is something here about, it means doing things for people, taking time away from your own schedule. Oh, there's an issue about time. So I make sure that my 3 nodes is highlighted, right click, that's going to be time. I select the passage, coding at time, and because it's important to make sure that after several hours of coding we can be tired and we can make mistakes, NVivo gives us an interesting tool which is the coding stripes. When we activate the coding stripes, we've got a reminder in this small window here that this text passage was coded at the node of time. Okay, I'm happy with this. I'm going to continue doing some, let's say, light coding. Let's say that this one I've got right, and it's not about you, it's about something out of it. That could be, I'm going to code it about I don't know, perhaps relationship, the fact that you give your time but it's not necessarily for you, it's for the other people. We're going to create a new node, relationship. Okay, I'm going to call it here. Something else again about time. Continue coding. And here Hélène, well, she says, well, I might have a different story because my volunteer work was prompted by the court, so that was not very volunteer. It was not based on any things that came from me. So, interesting. I'm going to create, let's say, people were forced by law. Oh, sorry. By law. Okay, so I'm going to call what Hélène has said. Okay. If you want, you can also access the content of your node. When I double click on force by law, I have a new tab that appears and what has been coded is there. If you want to code in an NVivo way, when you see that within your data there is keywords that are either repeated or mean something, we can use the coding bar, which is this bar here, which I'm going to bring down here. Oh, where has it gone? Hey, my coding bar. Here it is. Okay. So let's say that here, Ellen says something about non-violent crimes, and if I see that this is a thing that reoccurs, you select this passage of text, and in your coding bar here, you're going to be clicking on the small item that has the blue circle, code in vivo. Automatically, a free node has been coded, has been created, but only the text that was highlighted has been coded there. So it's not hugely significant, but what you could do is to code more broadly what came within that keyword. Okay, so let's say that I am happy with my sequence of free node, and now I want to bring them as dimensions of my current use of times within my tree nodes. So I'm going to come here, defining volunteer work. I'm going to create a child node within defining volunteer work, which I'm going to call new tree node. That's going to be my different dimensions. Okay. Go back into free node, select, right click, copy. And I'm going to paste them. Paste, yes. And here are my new sequence, okay? So that was for coding data. There is more features, more options, but this is very the basic, how to create node and to move free node to tree node. And nodes are organic items in a project. They can be paste, copy, deleted. We have an undo version, an undo option here that can undo up to the last 7 steps that you've made. So I don't know if you've coded the data under the influence of alcohol and you want to uncode some of the features, this is a very important tool. So now we're going to be looking at some of the analysis, and because I don't know, because this is the small project we've been doing, and we need more coding to do some analysis, I will save my project and I will open the tutorial. So close the project, and I'm going to be opening the project tutorials that comes with the software when we buy it. So I've got my focus group, my interviews, I've got in my nodes, I've got a series of free nodes, and I've got several tree nodes. So I still have my different topics for focus group and interview, which I automatically coded, but I also have a series of new nodes and tree nodes that were created. So for the analysis, I'm going to be in this section here. Yes, okay. So queries. So I see that what is good in NVivo7 is that you can run queries and save them and rerun them as you upload new data. So let's say at the beginning you have 2 or 3 transcripts, but you already felt that there was something in the data with the sociodemographics of your respondent. You run a query, you can save it, and you can rerun it when you have more data uploaded and coded. So we're gonna, with the time that we have, we're going to be running some interesting queries, but not all. So in the query option, we've got a text search. A text search would be when you want to see the context in which, let's say, the word passion or commitment, bless you, have been expressed and the context in which that was expressed, you run a text search. It's very basic. It's gonna give you the keyword that you search for with the context that came with it. A found component query, a coding query. We're gonna first run a coding query, and that's gonna be my question. My hunch is social interaction an important issue for women in the study? Okay. So I'm gonna, so make sure that you are in the navigation view, you are in queries, bring your cursor in the list view, right click, coding query. Okay, I'm gonna save my query, so that's gonna be, it's a coding query, and I'm looking at which is a node, social interaction with, it's with women. Okay. And I'm gonna save this. So this is simply the overall general name of my query. And I'm gonna automatically now go into the other tab. I'm gonna save it. I want to save the result as a new node, which is going to be located in my free node. This is only what I like to do, but you might prefer saving your query somewhere else in your data, and I'm going to give it obviously the same name. Okay. The coding criteria, this is the important part because this is where you input what you're looking for. I'm going to select advanced. So I am looking to see the intersection at whose women or how many women have said something that was coded at the node social interaction. So I'm going to be starting with selecting the attribute. So I am looking at gender, who are females, add to list, and I want to pairwise female with the node that is social interaction, which is here. So I'm going to open, sorry, personal goals, and social interaction is here. Okay. Okay. Add to list. I want to run my search in all sources. So I'm going to leave it this way. I'm going to run the search. So here I see, what do I see here as my result? This is each instance in which women have said something about social interaction, which was coded. So for the first two documents, I unfortunately don't see who has mentioned who's amongst my respondents have said so, but there's something we can do to know who have mentioned this. So I see for my individual interview, Anna said something, Bernadette, Grace, etc. So to know within my focus group who has mentioned something about social interaction, I'm going to select all my results, and I'm going to be looking at knowing the header level. So here I know that it's actually Hélène, Annie, and here I know that it's Bernadette, etc. I'm quite happy with that. And I want to make sure that this result has been saved within my nodes. So go into my free node, and here is my search result. Okay. This is important because we're going to now be building a matrix and a relationship with that result. Okay. The other query that we're going to be running will be a matrix. So I'm going to actually see the difference in terms of the coding density between gender and the two types of goals, social and personal goals, because I have a hunch that because of the gender roles, women were more prompt to talk about personal goals that are important for them within the action of volunteering, while men were probably more focused on the social aspect. Okay, go back in my query, right click, new query, that's a matrix. I'm going to save my matrix. This is social and personal goals. pairwise with gender. I'm going to save my matrix results within, that's going to be within results here. For matrix result cannot be saved as free nodes simply. I'm happy with that. So within my matrix coding criteria, this is where you input what you want for your columns and for your rows. So for my columns, for my rows, that's going to be the two types of nodes. Okay, so I'm going to go and select them. So it's in free node, and I'm going to select all the personal goals and all the social goals. Very good, I'm happy with that. Add to list. So here I see the whole list of children nodes that pertain to social and personal goals. For my columns, I'm going to select the attribute condition, which is gender. I'm going to first upload female and then male. Okay. My matrix, I want and, so I want the intersection. And this is interesting because according to your coding protocol, you could exclude one of the entry of your matrix to eliminate anything that has something to do. But for the exercise of today, I want to see the intersect. So I'm happy with it. I'm going to run the search. Okay. So my matrix here, the way we can read it, and I'm going to bring this toolbar here. So here I see the different nodes in my rows, and my two columns are made of male and female. I'm going to put a bit of shading to see the contrasts. By default, when I right-click on my matrix, it's the sources coded that is generated. So what do I see is that there was, let's say, there was 4 sources that were coded where the intersect of respondent female has said something that was coded as making a difference. Okay, if you only have individual interviews, that's an interesting outline, an output. But if you have focus groups, or if you have very little document, if you do biography, and I know you decided to put all your data in 3 documents, you don't rely on such. So here, I've taken the result of the repartition between gender for social goals and personal goal, and I see that this was the coding repartition for female compared to male. So this is a visual representation of how the two genders were intersect in terms of what they said and what was coded at this series of children. Okay. So that was for the coding, and last for the relationship. I don't know. Do we have 3 more minutes?
Oh, definitely.
Yes. Is that okay with the audience? Are you still there? I know it's very heavy, and I'm bombarding you with this information. So now the 4th and last module is how can we best report our data findings, our research findings. One of the example is the pie chart that I just showed you. So that's an example. Another example is if you would like to use some of the models. So the models are, so this is one of the models here that the tutorial provides us, and it's at the second coding stage. So we see that personal goals, we see different children's nodes, etc., etc. So we're going to actually build now a model that's going to represent that indeed social interaction seems to mean a lot to women. Okay, so I'm going to go into my classification. In my classification, I have my different attributes, but I don't want to deal with this type of classification. What I want is, first of all, to build a relationship type. So I'm going to change the layout of my screen. So here we see by default we have different relationship types that came with the tutorial. I want to create a new one, which I'm going to call means a lot. Oh, I already have it. Okay. Yeah, because that's the exercise of last night that I did. Okay, so means a lot is there. I'm happy with this. So now what I need to do, I need to tell my relationship what means a lot to what within my project items. So I'm going to go into my nodes. My relationship is here. I'm going to build a new relationship, and then I'm going to bring together that it was, let me say, before running this this option, I need to create a set of all women, because I want to represent in my model that it's indeed it's a topic that matters more for women. So I'm going to now ask NVivo, please bring together in a set all the women in my database. So I've used this search bar here. So I'm going to be looking for cases. So I'm simply asking NVivo, please retrieve all the cases that are females. Here they are. And I'm going to select them all and create a set for all of them. So that's going to be all women. And with that, I can now build my relationship. So what I'm going to be actually putting together is all social interaction means a lot to women. So first of all, my departure point for my relationship, it's my free node, which we created when we run the coding search. So I'm going to select it first. So social interaction means a lot to what? I'm going to be looking at my set to women. And the type of relationship, I'm going to be looking for the type that I just created, which is means a lot. Okay, and it's a one way. It could be both ways. If there was to be a relationship from beginning to the end, I'm okay with that. Change my layout. So here my relationship, where is it? Here it is. So social interaction means a lot to women. That's fine, but this relationship is actually empty. It's only a feature. What I want to do is actually coding all the instances in which women said something about social interaction. So I make sure that my relationship is highlighted. Go in my free node. Okay, so this is this part of the text here. I'm going to reduce some of it here. Okay. Go back in my relationship here. And now Control A, which is a feature to select all the text. And I'm going to drag and drop the text to my relationship. And to make sure that that has been well executed, I'm going to open my relationship. And this is actually the small sign for a relationship. So I see that everything was coded. I'm happy with this. And now I want to bring my relationship in my model. I'm going to create a new model. I'm going to change the layout of the screen. So my new model, it's obviously it's social interaction means I love women. Okay. I'm going to remove some of the extra feature. And now what do? My model is created. I'm going to drag and drop the relationship that is here in my model. And by default, NVivo asks you, do you want also the sources, the original sources that have been coded? I say yes, and here it is. So what I actually see, and I'm going to undock the window for us to see better, because the NVivo7 window can become very packed, and you know there is lots of things, so I'm going to give us some more room. So what do I see here? I have my node. Oops. I'm going to only select social interaction. Come on. Okay. So that's my node social interaction. This is my relationship that needs to be, so means a lot. And to who? Well, to a series of individuals that all appear to be women. So these are the documents, the original documents. And all these people, let's say, are women. Okay? And when you want to remove some of the project, some of your model items, select it and you say cut, select it, cut, yeah. This model can be exported in Word, in PowerPoint, you select it all, right click, copy. I'm going to open in Word a new document, right click and paste, and that's your model. So these are interesting features when you have taken like a screenshot of the development of your work, that makes interesting PowerPoint presentation and interesting annex as well. I'm going to conclude in one of the other reporting feature of NVivo, which is printing a node coding report. So I'm going to go back in my project. And let's say I want to if I have 2 or 3 core categories and I want to put them in annex, because all my discussions were about these nodes, I'm going to go into, tool reports. Let's say that I want to create a node coding report, a node summary. I don't want a summary of all my nodes in my project. I want a selected node, and I'm going to, of course, select some of my key 3 nodes, which are personal goals here, where I have social interaction. I'm going to click on OK. I want everything, the folder, the hierarchy, the type names. I'm happy with that. So that's the node summary report. What it says is, first of all, that's the parent node, that is personal goals. Its features are irrelevant because nothing has been coded there. But what is interesting, we see the different children nodes of that parent node, and then we see the density of the coding, word coded, in how many paragraph coding references. Coding references is every time with your mouse that you've started and that you've coded text passages. So we see here that there was 70 word coded, but only at 2 instances of coding. The source coded and the cases. So this is also, we can also export this as a Word document, which can then be put as an annex of the pieces. So I think I'm basically done. So is there for any question about price, because you know it's all these are very interesting, but these cost money. But here we have the good news that what is available here?
We have NVivo available in this lab, which is available during normal business hours, and then possibly even extended hours if needed. But we have 7 desktops in here that have NVivo on them, so you're welcome to use them for any projects that you're working on.
Plus the workshop.
Plus, right, we're doing the workshop next week, Wednesday and Thursday. So.
There is a 30-day trial, free trial version that you can download, but be aware that QSR are again more on the ball than SPSS, and there's no way that you can re-download the trial version onto your computer after the trial. Many people have tried this and it's impossible. So if you are a very efficient coder in analysis and you want to do everything in 30 days, that's the option. Otherwise, if you want to buy your own license, $500, or there is the option of the single license for students. So here is for 12 months and it's $200. After 12 months, however, the project becomes inactive. No, the software becomes inactive. So that's, and we would be very grateful if you could fill in the evaluation.
And does anybody have any last minute questions? If not, you're welcome.
Do they have a demo on their website? A demo?
No, you have to download it onto your desktop.
There is a demo to be downloaded?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
On the website.
I thought that whether you were asking whether we could do the demo on the website. No,
There's a demo?
it's here. Download.
Oh,
This,
that's another way to try it on your own.
yes, but after 30 days it's gone. So QSR International, and you go into product NVivo7, and here is the download electronic file to access and install it onto your computer.
Can you code multiple things in a paragraph? So when you selected time, they were talking about time, and everything Anna said at that one instance was time. Can you code multiple things? Maybe
Oh
just say
yeah,
time.
absolutely,
Right,
absolutely. Yes.
Thank you very
Lean coding, remember at the beginning? She said-
Lean.
I call it lean coding. It's, you know, don't, only have a lot of parents, with very few children.
What's the name of this?
I call it lean coding.
Lean coding.
Especially when